we were talking before the podcast about, extra stories or whatever. Tell me some disaster stories. Do you know any yours or someone else's? Just funny road stories or disaster stories?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you one disaster story of another performer that I know, because this, I think, is one of my favorite disaster. I've got a few disaster stories of other performers I've heard, but this one is one of my favorites. And now, again, this did not happen to me. This happened to another performer who shall remain nameless.
You're protesting too much. You're protesting too much.
The story was, his girlfriend was his assistant. And so they were doing the metamorphosis, the substitution trunk. And so for the listeners who don't know, that's where the magician gets inside, is locked inside of a case. The assistant gets on top, holds up a curtain, and when she drops it, it's now him on top, and then he undoes everything. He opens up the case, and she pops out, generally in a costume change. So his assistant was his girlfriend, and he had broken up with her, and I can't remember if it's just but whatever it was, and he started seeing somebody very quickly. I'm trying to remember the exact details. It was years ago I heard this, and I'm not even sure I remember now that I'm thinking about who this was. But anyway, so what he did is he had his girlfriend coming to this show where he was going to be performing on live television, and his assistant, who he'd broken up with, she was going to be doing the show. So they'd just broken up probably a few days before. His girlfriend is watching this. So this assistant, who used to be his ex-girlfriend, was obviously not in a very favorable mood. So you imagine, he gets locked inside. She gets up on top. Cameras are rolling. This is live TV for, a morning show. She drops the curtain. So it's now him on top. He drops the curtain, undoes everything. He opens it up. She pops out in her underwear and bra. Everything screeched to a halt, and he's looking out to the audience. Can't understand why the camera guys are giving a funny look, and now he turns to look at her. She should have done a costume change. Now, her excuse to him was that I didn't have enough time to put on the new costume, but he, of course, realized afterwards, maybe I shouldn't have broken up with her, then had her assist on the show while my new girlfriend was sitting in the audience watching.
Right.
So that was a huge disaster story that I remember. So a couple from me, crazy, absolutely nuts. And this again, I think I'm remembering who it was, but this was years and years ago. He was younger, and anyway.
Well, do you know the story? Do you know the story about the Pendragons? They did the world's fastest metamorphosis, of course. But there's a video on YouTube that a friend of mine shared with me a few years ago where they were doing it at, what's the guy's name? Oh, shoot. Captain Kirk. He was the host of the television show.
William Shatner.
Did you see that skit? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
No.
So he was hosting it. It was one of the grand theaters in Europe in front of the Queen. And the Pendragons are there, and William Shatner's talking them up and saying how great they are. When they do the switch, Jonathan's playing to the audience and opens up the box to reveal Charlotte, and she's pulling the lid down. She won't let him open it up, and she just kind of sticks her head out. Her costume, she couldn't put her bottoms on, or when she changed, her bottoms fell off or ripped or something.
No.
So it's on YouTube. No. You can see it. So she will only open up the trunk a little bit and stick her head out. Yeah, I'm switched, and yeah, I'm here, but she couldn't. And she took the final bow and went to commercial, and she was just waving from inside the box.
Yeah. Yeah, just
oh my God, hilarious! No, I don't know that story. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
So for me, I've got a few, but a couple of stories that certainly. So as I said, I used to be much more into ventriloquism, and as a puppeteer. And many years ago, I was doing a kids' party, and I'm talking, I was maybe 16 years old, 17 years old, probably not even that old. And there's kids, and so what I do is the way that I would do it is I would do about half an hour of magic, and then end with about 10, 15 minutes of ventriloquism. And I had my ventriloquist figure, and I'm holding on to the head stick. And as I used to be able to do something with this particular type of figure. That when I would wiggle the stick, his head would sort of shake back and forth, and I would make him do a funny noise that always made the kids laugh. During this one time, his head fell off.
Oh.
And I heard this. I was like a ninja and a Jedi. I heard the snap of the stick, and my head whipped around to look at it. As his head's pitching forward, and my hand comes up and grabs it and puts it back on. I now turn the stick so his head's now towards me, because that head would have just rolled into the audience. And geez, what's the matter with you? Oh, Jason, I'm not feeling very well right now. Okay, let's go back in the case and close the case up. Okay, I'm gonna do some more magic. But could you imagine? I mean, there's not enough years on the therapist's couch that would have helped those kids if they saw that dummy's head roll into the crowd, right? So that was one story that happened to me I always remember. And then the other big disaster story, happened, so I just recently got remarried a year and a half ago to the absolute love of my life. But my first marriage was back in 2000. And, of course, obviously, I'm divorced. And 3 days before that, I was performing in a restaurant. Now, I was a heavy-duty restaurant performer through high school, through university for many years. I was at one restaurant for 12 years, 3 nights a week. I outlasted 6 general managers. And at that particular restaurant, this was 2 nights before I was the actual wedding. So for those of you who have been married before, you know that generally your wedding day is a pretty nerve-wracking day. And the days leading up to the wedding day are pretty nerve-wracking as well because there's a lot on your mind. So I was doing a trick called ring flight. And Wes, I know you do ring flight, but for the listeners, it's basically a ring vanishes and it ends up generally on your key case, which is in your back pocket. It's a stunning trick. But there are real-less ring flights and real ring flights, and that's all I'm going to say. The real ring flights, I've heard some disaster stories about, and I had one of them. Because it's 2 days or 3 days before my wedding, and the secret something I was supposed to do to make sure the ring was going to appear where it was, I just didn't. And I must have dropped the ring. So I'm going through the routine, these 2 lovely ladies at a table who I was performing for. I reach in my back pocket, and your ring, and I open up, and the keys dump out, but there's no ring there. And I go, And in my mind, I'm thinking, it's just probably in my back pocket. And I reach into my back pocket, and there's no ring there. So now I'm looking around. And sort of on the floor, whatever, and my heart is beating a mile a minute, and the women are just laughing out. They think it's all part of the trick. And one of the servers, one of the busboys came up to me. He goes, Jason, what's going on? And at this point, I'm possessed. I go, I dropped the ring. You must help me find it. Right? Like, I'm just possessed right now. And he's looking around, and he picks it up, and he holds his hand out. And he says, is this it? So if you can picture a ring with a stone on the top, so picture holding it up by the circle part, the ring part, and the stone's on top. Now picture that someone has stepped on it, so now the ring is at a 45-degree angle pointing to the sun.
Oh, no.
So, of course, I'm 2 days away from getting married. I'm already not in my right mind. And I took the ring, and I sit down at the table. I said, ma'am, we've now had what we call a colossal failure. And I remember how the part that I almost emotionally lost it was how sweet it was when she looked at her friend, looked at me with this very bewildered look on her face and says, is this part of the trick? But she actually thought this was, now her destroyed ring was part of it.
Wow.
And I was profusely apologizing. Of course, she said, this was a family heirloom. And my manager came by, what's going on, and I explained, and he took care of it. I had just, remember, I was about to get married. I've been doing a lot of jewelry stuff, so I knew that it was an easy fix. And they could fix it, but still, anyhow, the manager afterwards came to me, he goes, look, you got to keep doing that trick. It was an accident, it happened, don't worry, we're going to get it fixed, it's on us. And it wasn't even very expensive to fix. But I gave the ladies my business card. I said, I would be shocked if you ever wanted to see me again, but if you do a free show, whatever you want, it is on me. I was horrified, and Wes, you and I talked about this, and Natalie, you and I have talked about this too, is about the pride that we take in our work as performers and the trust that people put in us when they come on stage, when they book us, when they welcome us into their community hall, when they welcome us into their home. And it's that's where I sort of battled with that sort of that guilt and that emotional part of me, because here's somebody trusting me with their ring, with their object, with their bill, with their whatever it was. And that was something, that stuck with me for a while. And so my manager had to have the last, what he called laugh on it. So at the actual wedding day, I had invited him and his partner to come, and he saw me in the middle of at the show. Hey, Jason, you having a good time? And I said, yeah, you guys enjoying the wedding? He goes, yeah. He goes, one of the guests brought this in, and he reaches into his pocket And what he had done is just gone to a street vendor, got himself a semi-cheap silver ring, and stomped the crap out of it. He pulls it out, puts it in his hand, he goes, "Here, they just want to know if you could fix this for him."
Wow.
I was killing myself. It was so funny. It was so funny. So
well, that's what I was thinking.
A major disaster moment.
I was thinking you were going to say it was a cheap ring they got out of a Cracker Jack box. That's why it cracked or bent so hard. How did it get bent like that? If you just dropped it from waist level.
Yeah, it just dropped, and somebody had walked by, didn't even realize it, and just stepped on it. That was all. Someone just stepped on it because, you're walking around. But it was, and I've heard horror stories about the ring flight. Magicians performing it on the top deck of a cruise ship, and it drops into the ocean, gone.
Or the stone flies.
Or the stone flies out, exactly. So, of course, I'm much more careful since then, of doing it, but that was probably one of the biggest disasters. And again, just sort of the emotional state that I was in right then. I didn't handle it very well. I handled it very well with them, but for myself, it stuck with me for a little bit.